become so crazy, but we're just going green. People think we're so crazy, but we're just going green. People think that we're so crazy, we're just going green. People think that we're so crazy, we're just going green.
And a very good afternoon, Phuket. Nick Anthony here with Going Green, show number 73. Thanks for joining us this afternoon here on Live 89.5, coming from the studio in Phuket Town. Firstly, before I jump into the Going Green show, I'm just going to give you an update here on the weather. It has been a cloudy and somewhat wet afternoon, a high of 33 today and a low of 26 overnight. You're looking at mostly cloudy weather the next couple of days, although it looks like both the wind and the rain will ease over the next 2 or 3 days. Over on the beaches, you're looking at about a 1 metre swell, a little bit of surf the last couple of days. Low tide this afternoon at 5:30, high tide this evening at 11:20. A sunrise will be at 6:08 tomorrow morning, and this afternoon you'll see a sunset around 6:38. So over the last couple of months, we see our sun rising a little earlier and our sunset a little later. So we're getting about another half an hour in the day over the last 3 months. Okay, let's take a look at green news. Very important news overnight. Last Saturday on the show, I talked about the expectations internationally that the number of parts per million, the ppm, for CO2 was likely to go over 400 sometime this month. Well, it happened last night and surprised a lot of people and is indeed very negative news. George Monbiot is someone who we follow very closely here on the Going Green show, and he writes spectacularly well about international issues. And I'm going to start this afternoon's show by leading off with an article that's come out of The Guardian, written by George last night. And he suggests that the data actually goes back over 800,000 years, and that's the age of the oldest fossil air bubbles, which have been extracted from Dome C, which is an ice-bound summit in the high Antarctic. Throughout that time, there has been nothing like this. At no point in the pre-industrial record have concentrations of carbon dioxide in the air risen above 300 parts per million. 400 ppm is a figure that belongs to a different era. The difference between 399 ppm and 400 ppm is of course small, in terms of its impacts on the world's living systems. But this, last night, is a moment of symbolic significance. It's a station on the Via Dolorosa of environmental destruction. It is symbolic of our failure to put the long-term prospects of the natural world and the people it supports above self-interest. The only way forward now is back, to retrace our steps and seek to return atmospheric concentrations to around 350 ppm, just as the 350.org campaign demands. That requires, above all, that we leave the majority of the fossil fuels, which have already been identified, in the ground. There is not a government or an energy company which has yet agreed to do so. Recently, Shell announced it will go ahead with its plans to drill deeper than any offshore oil operation has gone before, almost 3 kilometers below the Gulf of Mexico. At the same time, Oxford University this last week opened a new laboratory in its Department of Earth Sciences. The lab is funded by Shell. Oxford says that the partnership is designed to support more effective development of natural resources to meet fast-growing global demand for energy. Put into English, that translates as finding and extracting even more fossil fuels. The European Emissions Trading Scheme, which is supposed to have capped our consumption, is now for practical purposes dead. International climate talks have stalled. Governments all over the world seem quietly to be unpicking their domestic commitments. Practical measures to prevent the growth of global emissions are, by comparison to the scale of the challenge, almost non-existent. The problem is simply stated. The power of the fossil fuel companies is too great. Among those who seek and obtain high office are people characterized by a complete absence of empathy or scruples, who will take money or instructions from any corporation or billionaire who offers them, and then defend those interests against the current and future prospects of humanity. This new climate milestone reflects a profound failure of politics, in which democracy has quietly been supplanted by plutocracy. Without a widespread reform of campaign finance, lobbying, and influence peddling, and the systemic corruption they promote, our chances of preventing climate breakdown are becoming close to zero. So here stands our political class at a way station along the road of idiocy, apparently determined only to complete the journey. Just to repeat here, overnight we've seen ppm, parts per million of CO2 in the atmosphere, go above 400 for the first time in the history of the world. This is a milestone, it's important, and it's devastating news. Stay tuned. This is Going Green, show number 73, and I'll be back with some more positive news in terms of local aspects of what we are trying to do locally here on the island. And so do stay tuned, there'll be lots of good things coming up.
With the issues that matter to the island, the environment, and the planet, this is Going Green with Nick Anthony on Live 89.5.
This is show number 73, and this afternoon I've been talking about how a milestone has been broken last night, and the number of parts per million, the ppm, of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere has passed the milestone level of 400. The last time so much greenhouse gas was in the air was several million years ago, when the Arctic was ice-free, savanna spread across the Sahara Desert, and sea level was up to 40 meters higher than today. Here in Phuket, you can see evidence of that, actually up in Phang Nga Bay, where the limestone casts are actually old coral reefs. And so you're looking at these things thinking, how did they get there? How did they come up out of the ocean? In fact, they were coral reefs, so the ocean has sunk. This is, of course, several million years ago. Now, these conditions are expected to return in time, with devastating consequences for civilization. Unless emissions of CO2 from the burning of coal, gas, and oil are rapidly curtailed. But despite increasingly severe warnings from scientists and a major economic recession, global emissions have continued to soar unchecked. These are comments taken from the Guardian newspaper overnight from Damien Carrington, one of the most respected environmental journalists in the UK. According to Professor Ralph Keeling, who oversees the measurements on a Hawaiian volcano, which were begun by his father in 1958, and is the founder of the Keeling chart, he says that it is symbolic. It's a point to pause and think about where we have been and where we are going. It's like turning 50. It's a wake-up to what has been building up in front of us all along. The passing of this milestone is a significant reminder of the rapid rate at which the extent to which we have increased the concentration of greenhouse gases in the atmosphere, said Professor Rajendra Pachauri, who is the chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, which serves as science advisor to the world's governments. He goes on to say that at the beginning of industrialization, the concentration of CO2 was just 280 ppm. We must hope that the world crossing this milestone will bring about awareness of the scientific reality of climate change and how human society should deal with that challenge. The world's governments have agreed to keep the rise in global average temperature, which have already risen by over 1 degree, to 2 degree maximum rise, the level beyond which catastrophic warming is thought to become unstoppable. But the International Energy Agency warned in 2012 that on current emissions trends, the world will see 6 degrees of warming, a level scientists warn would lead to chaos. With no slowing of emissions seen to date, there is already mounting pressure on the UN summit in Paris in 2015, which is the deadline set to settle a binding international treaty to curb emissions. Ed Davey, the UK's Energy and Climate Change Secretary, said this isn't just a symbolic milestone. It's yet another piece of clear scientific evidence of the effect human activity is having on our planet. He goes on to say that he's made it clear that he will not let up on efforts to secure the legally binding deal the world needs by 2015 to avoid the worst effects of climate change. Ed Davey, the UK's Energy and Climate Change Secretary, said that this isn't went over that. Going on, two CO2 monitoring stations on the Hawaiian volcano of Mauna Loa are run by the US National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, and provide the global benchmark measurement. Data released yesterday shows that the daily average has passed 400 ppm for the first time in its half-century of recording. The level peaks in May each year as the CO2 released by decaying vegetation is taken up by renewed plant growth in the northern hemisphere, where the bulk of plants grow. So it is seasonal. Analysis of fossil air trapped in ancient ice and other data indicate that this level has not been seen on Earth for 3 to 5 million years, a period called the Pliocene. At that time, global average temperatures were 3 or 4 degrees higher than today's and 8 degrees centigrade warmer at the poles. Reef corals suffered a major extinction, while forests grew up in the northern edge of the Arctic Ocean, a region which is today bare tundra. I think it's likely that all these ecosystem changes could recur, said Richard Norris, who is a colleague of Keeling's at the Scripps Institute. The Earth's climate system takes time to adjust to the increased heat being trapped by high greenhouse levels, and it may take hundreds of years for the great ice caps in Antarctica and Greenland to melt to the small size of the Pliocene and sea level far above many of the world's major cities. But the extreme speed at which CO2 is now rising, and they're suggesting perhaps it's running at 75 times faster than in pre-industrial time, has never been seen in geological records, and some effects of climate change, as we know, are already being seen. Extreme heat waves and flooding all the more likely. Recently we've seen wet and cold summers in Europe, and that indeed has been linked to changes in the high-level jet stream winds, which in turn is linked to the rapidly melting sea ice in the Arctic, which shrank this year to its lowest recorded level. We are creating a prehistoric climate in which human societies will face huge and potentially catastrophic risks, said Bob Ward, who's a policy director at the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change at the London School of Economics. Only by urgently reducing global emissions will we be able to avoid the full consequences of turning back the climate clock by 3 million years. Very shocking news, and it shows that we all have the capacity and we all have the capability, if we can pull together, to try to combat some of these effects. Stay tuned. I'll continue this discussion on the effect of overnight going above 400 ppm as a CO2 reading.
Nick Anthony, caring about your island home. This is Going Green on Live 89.5.
Welcome back. Going Green, show number 73. We've had a serious start to our show this afternoon with news that the 400 ppm threshold has been broken overnight. That is 400 parts per million, which is the concentration of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. I'm going to read you a couple of other comments from the Guardian newspaper, and then we'll wrap up this discussion and look at a few different aspects of what's happening here on the planet. But Bob Ward, who's the policy director at the Grantham Research Institute on Climate Change at the LSE, says that we're creating a prehistoric climate in which human societies will face huge and potentially catastrophic risks. Professor Bob Watson, who is the former IPCC chair and UK government chief scientific advisor, said that passing this 400 ppm of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere is indeed a landmark, and the rate of increase is faster than ever and shows no sign of abating due to lack of political commitment to address the urgent issue of climate change. He says that the world is now most likely committed to an increase in surface temperature of somewhere between 3 and 5 degrees centigrade compared to pre-industrial times. The graph of the rising CO2 at the Mauna Loa in Hawaii is known as the Keeling curve, after the late Dave Keeling, the scientist who began the measurements in March 1958. The isolated Hawaiian island is a good location for measurements, as it is far from the main source of CO2, meaning it represents a good global average. Well, the WWF, the World Wildlife Foundation, put out an article yesterday talking about the current situation on the planet today, and they start with effectively saying that the Earth still parties like there is no morning, and there will not be any hangover. Well, we've all heard stories about the foolish rich guy who blew his fortune on outlandish cars, homes, and yachts. They usually follow a predictable path. He experiences a windfall of cash, spends beyond his means, and inevitably plummets into bankruptcy. This story is being played out on the biggest stage of all, planet Earth. On the whole, humanity is currently on a natural resource spending binge. At the same time, more than 1 billion people go to bed hungry every night. Until we balance these inequities, we'll all suffer the consequences, from the price we pay for food to access to clean water. And if this doesn't grab your attention, here are 7 facts about our growing appetite for Earth's finite resources that might. In the next 40 years, we have to produce as much food as we have in the past 8,000 years. These daunting words were first spoken by former U.S. Secretary of Agriculture Dan Glickman, and similar statistics have recently been issued by the UN's Food and Agriculture Organization, the FAO. On a finite planet with dwindling land available on which to farm, scaling up food production at this rate requires doing more with less. Americans, this is point number 2, waste enough food each year to fill 91 Empire State Buildings. Globally, we waste 1/3 of all food produced. Eliminating waste would effectively halve the amount of new food needed by 2050. In developing regions, waste results from post-harvest losses and lack of infrastructure. In developed regions, too much food is wasted by the consumer. Portions are too big, and we tend to throw away leftovers. Sell-by doesn't equal a use-by. Point number 3. It took China just 12 years to double its per capita gross domestic product. It took India 17 years. Compare this to the UK, where it took 155 years, and the United States, which took 53 years, and you start to grasp the unprecedented pace with which developing markets are growing. This is vital to address global hunger and poverty, but development must occur with an eye towards the future. I was looking at some future dates over the last week, and in 2045, India is expected to surpass the US in GDP. Point number 4. By 2050, nearly 70% of the world's population will live in cities, more people than are alive today. This exodus is largely occurring in less developed regions, with a rapidly scaling middle class, placing further strain on resources with its additional buying power. The typical urbanite uses more water and consumes more meat-laden diets than their rural counterpart. At the same time, 1/3 of the world's population is already affected by water scarcity for at least 1 month each year, and this figure is increasing. Stay tuned. Going Green, show number 73. I'll be back in just a moment, talking about an article from the WWF, talking 7 facts about our growing appetite for Earth's finite resources. This is Nick Anthony.
People think I'm so crazy, but we're just going green. People think we're so crazy, but we're just going green. People think that we're so crazy, we're just going green. People think that we're so crazy, we're just going green.
And a good afternoon. Thanks for joining us here on the Going Green Show, show number 73 this afternoon. We've been talking about an article from the World Wildlife Foundation, which is considering about the state of the planet's appetite for what are finite resources. There are 7 facts they've presented. The first is that in the next 40 years we have to produce as much food as we have in the past 8,000. The second, Americans waste enough food each year to fill 91 Empire State Buildings. Number 3, it took China just 12 years to double its per capita gross domestic product. India, 17, UK, 155, and the US, 53. Gives you an idea of the scale of what is happening today. Number 4, by 2050, nearly 70% of the world's population will live in cities, more people than are alive today. Number 5, 4 crops, corn, soybeans, wheat, and rice, comprise about 75% of the caloric content of food production worldwide. We place too much stock in just 4 commodities. With the ever-present threat of weather variability due to climate change, a single drought or extreme weather event can have drastic impacts on global food supplies, and consequently, the prices we pay. It's time to consider gleaning more calories from crops traditionally neglected by food producers like cassava, sweet potatoes, and amaranth. Number 6, farmed shrimp is the most valuable food commodity in the world. Aquaculture is the fastest growing food producing sector. More than half of the world's shrimp now comes from a farm. Considering the average per capita consumption of shrimp in the US is around 4 pounds, and that 85% of the world's marine stocks are either fully exploited or overfished, responsible shrimp aquaculture can help save the world's oceans. And lastly, number 7, globally, forests are lost at a rate of 36 football fields per minute. I'm going to say that again. Forests globally are being lost at a rate of 36 football fields per minute. It's a mind-boggling number. Growing demand for forest and agricultural products, coupled with unsustainable practices and poor legal enforcement, is at the root of this troubling trend. Forests are the lifeblood of our planet, and nearly half of Earth's original forest cover has been lost. Initiatives like the FSC and RED are making strides by creating market incentives to conserve them. And in this second hour this afternoon, I'll talk a little bit about a new IUCN initiative to protect global forests also. So there you have it. Over the past few decades, humanity has consumed 50% more resources than the Earth can provide. If we keep spending like this, by 2030, even 2 planets will not be enough. We can reverse this trend through market-based solutions, changing public policies, and a shift in consumption patterns. Whether or not we stave off Earth's bankruptcy is now in our hands. This is Nick Anthony. You're listening to Going Green, show number 73. After 4 o'clock, we'll be back talking about local and international news. We'll review the Phuket News newspaper, which came out yesterday for the week, and we'll be looking at beach cleaning on the west coast of Phuket and the impact right now of these westerly winds in bringing plastic up onto the beaches that our tourists and Phuket's lifeblood hangs on so I would say loosely, because we have had a trash crisis on our beach for the last 3 or 4 years, and a lot of tourists are saying they're not coming back. So it's really up to us to organize, to prepare, and to get out there and clean Phuket's west coast beaches between now and November, so that tourists indeed do have a fantastic stay.
With the issues that matter to the island, the environment, and the planet, this is Going Green with Nick Anthony on Live 89.5.
With the westerly winds that are now coming over from the Indian Ocean, as this time of year it happens, with the monsoons, of course we every year end up with a problem. And that problem is that the trash that's in the ocean gets blown onto our west coast beaches. After Songkran, the island has emptied out quite significantly. The roads are quieter, hotels are quieter, and the beaches are now down to generally 1 or 2 rows only of beach chairs, which is very nice to see. But for the tourists that are here, and when the sun is shining, we need to maintain the quality of our prime asset that Phuket has, our beaches and our waters. If our beaches are left to be dumping grounds, if our beaches are left to be litter pits, if they're allowed to become plastic way stations, then tourists will not return. About 4 years ago, we started a campaign to cancel what was called the low season, a time when people expected rain, people expected very cheap hotels, and came here with rather diminished expectations of their holiday on Phuket. And we changed it to Summer in Phuket. Summer in Phuket is now an annual event. We get Summer in Phuket from January to December, one of the joys of living on the equator or near the equator. Well, with this westerly winds and the trash that now comes from the oceans and blown by the wind onto what are generally pretty clean beaches, if we don't take it out, then as I said, the tourists won't come back. This year, we've seen a reduction already in the amount of trash that is coming up on the beaches. That is very good news. Perhaps we've seen about 30% reduction in the amount of garbage that is on our beaches, largely due to the actions of Kun Bai Boon, who's the Orbajor here on Phuket, supported by the Health Ministry, and they have coordinated street cleaning around all major roads on Phuket since 2010. That single action, we believe, is having a real impact on reducing litter into the ocean. By cleaning roadsides, we're seeing less plastic that's getting washed down. We're also seeing a reduction in mosquitoes on the roadsides, which is good news. But particularly in the oceans, it is looking pretty obvious that this campaign is starting to work. Next up for Phuket will be an island-wide litter campaign. It's currently being reviewed, and anybody out there that has any ideas for what the island should be doing, you're welcome to send us an email here to the station, or you can contact me through my Twitter account at IndigoNick, or indeed you can go to myseek.org and contact me through that NGO. Also, while I'm mentioning MySeek, it is a local NGO that's trying to do actions around Phuket, and every week you can find the content of the Going Green radio show on that website. Deborah Mirsak, who was in the studio a couple of weeks ago talking about waste, and her Magic Eyes campaign that she's now started around the Bang Wad Dam, has had already immediate positive results. Within 3 weeks, the dam has been transformed from a dumping ground with no litter bins to one that is now clean, that has a number of bins around it, and signs bringing back a 10-year-old campaign here in Thailand called Magic Eyes that is trying to educate locals about the impact of litter. In 2010, we went swimming one late afternoon. It was a fine sunny day, and it was towards the end of 2010. And we walked down to the beach, actually down to Surin Beach on that particular day, and it was probably the worst day for garbage on our beaches that I have seen in perhaps nearly 12 years. There was a 10-meter strip of litter from one end to the other. At Surin Beach, we coordinated a cleanup and catalogued and collected the debris and garbage before dark. The numbers were astounding, and at least as bad was the garbage on Bangtao, Kamala, and Patong, all badly hit on that particular Saturday. In total, on Surin Beach, we collected 60 kilograms of trash, 366 plastic bags, 200 ropes and nets, 166 plastic bottles, 97 food wrappers, 79 beverage caps, 39 straws, and an assortment of other debris, plastic shoes, flip-flops, and plastic spoons. Extrapolate these numbers out over 27 kilometers of our west coast beaches here on Phuket, and you end up with 135 times what we collected on one day, dumped on our otherwise beautiful beaches. That would equate to 49,000 plastic bags, 27,000 ropes, 22,000 bottles, 13,000 food wrappers, 10,000 beverage caps, and 5,235 straws. Unbelievable. Total garbage on that Saturday, if we extrapolate out those numbers, would have been around 8,100 kilos, or just over 8 tons. Can you imagine if this happened every day when the westerly blows and Phuket was hit with 49,000 plastic bags per day? Well, this was looking like the future of our island, and it did require change. Fortunately, Phuket over the last couple of years has started adopting a reduce, reuse, recycle and littering campaign, a stopping littering on Phuket. The westerly winds that bring this plastic in from the Andaman Sea will continue through to December, and it will take all of our efforts to pick up the trash where we see it, whether it's on the beach, in a drain, by your house or the office, and reduce the amount of litter that is flowing into the sea. Long term, this will impact the amount of trash in the water and the amount that gets washed up. The next step for the campaign will be to broaden the reduce, reuse and recycle awareness into the fishing fleets that ply our waters and currently throw all their trash overboard. On any given night, there can be between 1,000 and 2,000 fishing boats off the west coast of Phuket, and perhaps a full garbage bag of bottles, bags, caps and ropes is being dumped per boat per night, and this could well be the source of perhaps 20 or 30% of Phuket's beach debris. With a couple of groups here on the island, we've started to initiate some training with the fishing fleet, and we have our first fleet owner that owns 80 fishing boats starting to implement a reduce, reuse and recycle campaign on his boats. At the same time, their shipyards have been cleaned up. The waters around Phuket town where the shipyards are has been cleaned, and I must say a big improvement over the last 12 months. But until we get all 2,000 boats or so registered on Phuket that use this area as their fishing ground, until we get them to fully understand the ramifications of their actions, unfortunately, we will continue to see garbage coming up on our beaches with these westerly winds, and it's going to take all the efforts of you, me, and all of us here on Phuket to continue to keep it clean. When I came back after the break, I will talk a little bit about the Kamala Green Club. It's just announced its cleaning schedule for 2013. It's on Facebook. You can check it out, the Kamala Green Club on Facebook. Do check it out, click like, and try to support them in their weekly cleanups. But more about that in just a moment. This is A Flock of Seagulls with Iran.
People think I'm so crazy, but we're just going green. People think we're so crazy, but we're just going green. People think that we're so crazy, we're just going green. People think that we're so crazy, we're just going green.
There was Stop and Stare by One Republic. Well, I stopped and stared last week at Kamala Beach and I saw a beautiful, clean beach. The Kamala Green Club have been busy. They've just launched their cleaning schedule for 2013 on their Facebook page, so I do encourage you to go check that out. They're working with the Orbitor, a green NGO called NevNet, MNRE, which is the Ministry for Natural Resources and Environment, and the Phuket Marine Biological Centre, have all been involved in the support of this Kamala Green Club. Congratulations to Kun Steve and the team, Kun Joe also Paressa, Steve's at Andara, on their 6 new recycling stations that are now up and running around the beach all the way up to the northern end. And indeed, it's been broken up to a number of sections, and almost every 3 or 4 days there are beach cleanups going on. Next week, there'll be a beach clean on Tuesday on the northern end, which is near the Andara Beach Club. Do feel free to join in. That'll be at 10 a.m. And on Thursday morning, there'll be a 9 a.m. cleanup, which I'll be at down in front of Rockfish on the very south end of Kamala Beach. It's an area that gets very dirty as the Klong comes out and dumps a bunch of particularly household garbage, plastic bags and stuff like that. So it does require constant effort. So if you're up and about in Kamala this week, Tuesday on the north end at 10 a.m. and Thursday on the south end at 9 a.m. I talked last week with Peter Harris, who is in from Australia, about dengue fever. And despite the cleaner island this year, dengue stats for the first 4 months is in fact double 2012. The recent announcement from the Health Ministry targeting dengue fever is also partly based on a litter campaign, a clean environment, and better garbage collection, reduction, recycling, and generally a cleaner Phuket. So we're seeing serious government efforts are now helping us as private sector in maintaining West Coast to be a more pristine area, but it's going to take a lot of hard work over the next 6 months to keep our beaches clear, clean, and our tourists coming back. Local celebrity, as I'll call him, John Underwood, who's very well known for creating beautiful furniture, fans, lights, does all sorts of hotel interiors, many of it from salvaged debris. And indeed, John is supporting us in creating a beach art project. We'll make a garbage tree. So next week I'll deliver over to John a number of boxes and bags of stuff that we picked up, particularly up in the north end of Layan, and we'll make a beautiful tree out of this salvaged debris. Also, there's an NGO called Green Fins, run by a lady called Kun Gun, fantastic girl who does a great deal in Phuket at trying to encourage recycling and helping to keep our beaches clean. She uses all the debris for art. So any of you out there who are beach pickers, beach collectors, please separate your debris and garbage into 3 groups. The first is the recyclables, which are plastic bottles, aluminium cans, and glass beer bottles in particular. These can be placed in, if you're in Kamala, the green recycling bins that are littered around, and it's an idea that we are looking to set up in other island locations. But those are all recyclables, so take those out, don't throw them away. The second separation is for the art project, and we're asking all collectors, please, to keep fishing gear, floats, nets, ropes, string, bulbs from fishing boats, flip-flops, lighters, bottle caps, plastic toys, and all small brown Red Bull energy drink bottles. And they will be made into an art project. And then the balance of the garbage, which include plastic bags, bathroom items like toothbrushes, etc., should then be thrown away. This year in Kamala, it looks like we're going to try quite hard to track the data of the garbage that is collected using the ICC data cards, the International Coastal Conservancy, which have been collecting data on garbage picked up on beaches globally for a number of years. And their statistics are pretty shocking, but it does give a good idea of the scale of the beach debris. And hopefully by tracking volume in 2013, we should be able to show a dramatic drop in volume in 2014. So take a look at Kamala Green Club and please do join their cleanups. Over the week, I had a very good meeting with Colin at the O2 Beach Club and 2 of his colleagues. And in that meeting, they're going to go ahead and set up a South Phuket Green Club, which will include Chalong, Rawai, and Naihan. Kun Piao from Blue Dizine will also be coordinating that with Colin. And thanks very much to you guys for getting involved down there and helping to coordinate your community. Quetta and Kunok from Sikh and Absolute are setting up a Patong Green Club that's currently being set up at the moment. These will all be on Facebook, I expect, over the next couple of weeks. Similarly, Nick Franklin from CBRE, thank you, Nick, is setting up the Naiton Beach Green Club. And Sean Panton with the JW Marriott and the North Phuket Hotels will set up their Mai Khao and Natai Green Club. We still do require some volunteers from hotels or private individuals that are interested in setting up the Nanyang Green Club. Diwa and Indigo Pearl actually have been trying quite hard, but as there's a long stretch of national park, that may need full-time cleaners. Bang Tao, Laguna's doing a great job of cleaning up their area, a little bit up in the north and a little bit in the south, but Bang Tao water quality problems over the last month have highlighted a devastating effect when pollution is allowed, and it could destroy our tourism industry. South Bang Tao is quite critical, and that's an area we'd like to get some more support. The other 3 beach clubs which need to be set up, and there are enough hotels, so this shouldn't be a problem, is Surin Beach, which is actually pretty well cleaned, Kata Beach and Kata Green Club, also fairly well cleaned down there, and increasingly the Coron Green Club, which has very strong coordination from groups like Movenpick and the Hilton. So thanks very much for all your support in setting up these volunteer beach green clubs, making it easier to localize cleaning and collection, helping to Phuket to be a green and sustainable island. So there we are. Good on you. Green Club Kamala, leading the way with others to follow.
This is Going Green with Nick Anthony on Live 89.5.
Alrighty, good afternoon. Hope you're having a great day. It's 4:37, and I'm running out of time, and I have a ton of stuff still to tell you. It's been a jam-packed session today. Firstly, let's take a look at the Phuket News. The edition just came out yesterday, Friday. It's a weekly newspaper. It's the parent of our radio station here at 89.5, and they do a fabulous job at covering all of the issues on the island. And this week we'll take a look at some of the green issues and some of the social issues that does impact us. Firstly, front page, you see that lifeguards are awaiting a new contract. It looks like they may well be beyond May the 27th, no lifeguards on Phuket's beaches. This at a time when our waves are getting bigger, our monsoons are coming in, and it's becoming our most dangerous time with very, very nasty rip tides. The type of tourists we've got now on Phuket with Russians, Koreans, and even the Chinese, many of them cannot swim. And so they go out, they get to about waist deep in water, and they get pulled in by a rip. So you need to, if you're looking at the beaches over the next couple of weeks, just keep an eye. If there are no lifeguards on duty at the end of this month, take extra precautions. We do hope that the Orbitor, Kun Pai Boon, will be able to solve this solution quickly and continue to have lifeguards on the beaches for what is going to be a very critical time. I mentioned last week about our buddy Stu Clark from Coral Seekers, who had a bike accident, motorcycle accident, after dodging a cat. Was fortunately wearing a full-face helmet, however, has still lost the feeling to his legs. Stu is doing better, and good on you, Stu, if you're listening. There is a fundraiser and event for him in Phuket town. There's page 7 on Phuket News gives you all of those details, and there'll be a concert also in Phuket town on May the 19th. So do check that out, and please do get involved. Stu's a great guy, and any support is welcomed. There is, on page 6, information about the Governor Maitree joining a ceremony to mark the beginning of the cleanup of the stinking Klong Bang Yai that is in Phuket town. It's actually Phuket's longest and biggest canal. So very good news that they're starting there to break down some of the problems with what they call EM balls, and that actually speeds up the breakdown of sewage. And long term, the aim is to install 3 waste water treatment plants to handle the untreated sewage that currently flows in from areas in the Rasada municipality. A big issue, and about time they jump on that. Also, they're trying to tackle the Klong on the south end of Bang Tao Beach, which is the source of a black, like a gunge that came up on the Bang Tao Beach the week before last. That is having a big impact down there, and one hotel is closed down. And indeed, if that continued and got worse, we're going to be in a situation where Bang Tao South will actually be unswimmable. Also in the news on page 4, the Orbitor is targeting Phuket flooding with 60 million baht from the central government for flood protection projects around the island. With the rainy season just starting, it's a good time to be doing it. The main areas they're doing is in Patong, where plans and necessary sites are ready to build a floodgate to keep seawater out when the sea level rises too high. And in Phuket town, The wall along the side of Klong Bang Yai near Satri Phuket School is now very old. It'll be renovated, and also in Koh Kiao they will improve drainage. So good news there. Page 2, looking at the sea walking vessel that's been out on Kok Kai Noi. It's an island about 5 kilometers off the east coast of Phuket. And after years of these activities with what they call sea walking companies, officials this week went out to Kok Kai Noi, which is called Inner Egg Island, and they expelled a boat belonging to a sea walking operation and ripped out handrails that had been stored illegally underwater. The sea walking company was found to have ripped out 300 square meters of coral and installed underwater handrails for its clients. Long a controversial activity, sea walking involves tourists being fitted with plastic shoes and a large, heavy helmet with a pipe running to an air pump on the surface. They can then walk about on the bottom of the sea. About time they went after those guys, and good to see them taking action. The article on page 6 is talking about the Siranad National Park probe. It is still ongoing. The DSI, DNP, and Anti-Money Laundering Office continue the probe into 14 plots of land to aid public prosecutions. On the environment side, if you've ever thrown a banana peel in the yard or buried a pet, you've already started composting, which is actually nothing more than letting things decay the natural way. I do encourage you to go to the PhuketNews.com website, type in composting, and there you'll find an excellent article which will teach you how to compost. Doesn't take much. You just have to pick a spot in the yard, dig a 10 to 20 centimeter hole, which is only 50 by 50 centimeters wide. That's not very much. And then you can start to dump in your compost, put the grass cuttings, throw some leaves, mix it all together, and if you've got some old potting soil with a dead or dying plant, throw that in as well. Mix it all at once, cover it with leaves, grass cuttings, and that's pretty much it. Drop a bit of water on top, and the next time your compost bucket gets full, just empty the contents on top of the heap and cover it with a bit more grass or leaves. And this is called layering. So very good article there, thanks to Kevin Shoup. Soy Dogs, one of my favorite charities here and on the island, NGOs. They have now completed over the last 10 years just over 50,000 neuters, which is incredible over 10 years. There's a discussion now with the Department of Livestock regarding the introduction of this program nationally. Thailand has pledged to eradicate rabies by 2020 as part of ASEAN agreements. So very good news. In somewhat sadder news, on page 10 is an article about Thai police rescuing 1,300 smuggled dogs that were destined for dinner plates. So keep your puppies close. There are people out there that will steal dogs, and they do sell them into the meat trade, as sad as it is. Soy Dogs doing a great job there, neutering dogs, and also bringing the plight of these animals to a wider audience.
Nick Anthony, caring about your island home. This is Going Green on Live 89.5.
The time is 4:52. Hope you're having a great afternoon. The sun did pop out for a little while, and it looks like it'll be a reasonably nice sunset. So do get out on the beach, have a swim, and enjoy your weekend. Before I wrap up for tonight's show, this afternoon's show, I should say, let's take a quick look at the international green news. First up, Prince Charles attacks global warming skeptics, using a speech at St. James Palace this week to single out confirmed skeptics and environmentally unfriendly businesses. The Prince of Wales has criticised corporate lobbyists and climate change skeptics for turning the Earth into a dying patient. In his most outspoken attack yet on the world's failure to tackle global warming, made shortly before he is to take over from the Queen at the forthcoming meeting of the Commonwealth. Also, in international news, the IUCN has announced a new global standard in assessing environmental risk. It's called the IUCN Red List of Ecosystems, and it's been trialled on 20 ecosystems spanning 6 continents and 3 oceans. By knowing which ecosystems are tracking well and which ones are in trouble, governments, industries, and local communities will be well positioned to make smart investment decisions for a sustainable environment management. Very well done there from IUCN, who also this week signed an MOU with a key player in the tropical timber industry to try to work together on the assessment of timber species for the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species. This helps improve the way that forest resources are indeed managed. They will explore the important role that forest certification plays for biodiversity and for local, social and economic development. During its initial years, the new partnership will focus on the West and Central African sub-region. Positively this week, New York banned shark fin sales. Very well done to the state legislature that voted unanimously to ban the sale and distribution of shark fins, essential ingredient in shark fin soup. Also talking about the oceans, Sea Shepherd this week have announced on the back of their most successful campaign ever, which was Operation Zero Tolerance last year, that saved 932 whales. Sea Shepherd this week have launched Operation Relentless. Like the last season's campaign, Operation Relentless will be managed and led by Sea Shepherd Australia. It will be their 10th Antarctic whale defence campaign, defending at-risk whales in the Southern Ocean Whale Sanctuary. During the past 9 seasons, Sea Shepherd's direct action interventions have saved the lives of more than 4,500 whales and exposed illegal Japanese whaling to the world. Fantastic news there. Well done to Sea Shepherd, and Operation Relentless will no doubt be on TV and will be as successful as their others. On the website on myseek.org under our radio show, I've linked up a new video on Mexican sea turtle conservation, a very nicely put together doco. If you've got a minute, do check that out. Comments in over the week by Aussie coal-fat cat Clive Palmer. He's a nasty climate change denier and is creating the new Titanic. It's being made by a Chinese company. And in an interview with the Aussie media this week, he crazily made the comment, one of the benefits of global warming is that there's not as many icebergs in the North Atlantic. Take that as you will. Clive Palmer says it all. Well, in a more ecosystem, eco-friendly way on transportation, a plane powered only by the sun, by solar, has completed the first leg of a journey that aims to cross the US. It's called Solar Impulse, and it took off from San Francisco and landed in Phoenix, Arizona, some 18 hours later. The plane has the same wingspan as an Airbus A340, so a very wide plane, but it weighs only 1.6 tons. It's already made a day and night flight lasting more than 26 hours, and the team aims to eventually circumnavigate the globe in 2015. That's fantastic. That really is the state of aircrafts to come, and I'm sure we'll see more from guys like that. The EU is planning to impose tariffs on Chinese solar panels. The tariffs will be as high as nearly 70% to counter unfair pricing in the largest EU trade dispute of its kind. That's important. Also, Tesla, the electric car maker, made its first profit this year, in this month, in its 10-year history. It made $15 million of profit in the first 3 months of the year, thanks to sales of its Model S electric sedan. It's not for sale yet here in Thailand, but it is being introduced to Hong Kong. They managed to get worldwide orders for their Model S in excess of 20,000 vehicles per year. Excellent job. Well, that's it. I'm out of time. Do enjoy your weekend. Please get out there and clean some beaches. Do reduce, reuse, and recycle, and be responsible to Phuket and be responsible to our planet. Thanks very much for joining me here on the Going Green Show. Next Saturday, I've got Jeremy Tang will be here from Hong Kong. He'll be talking about retail practices, best practices, that is, on sustainability. So a retail discussion next Saturday. Do tune in 3 till 5 p.m. every Saturday.
Nick Anthony, caring about your island home. This is Going Green on Live 89.5.
The time is 4:52. Hope you're having a great afternoon. The sun did pop out for a little while, and it looks like it'll be a reasonably nice sunset. So do get out on the beach, have a swim, and enjoy your weekend. Before I wrap up for tonight's show, this afternoon's show, I should say, let's take a quick look at the international green news. First up, Prince Charles attacks global warming skeptics, using a speech at St. James Palace this week to single out confirmed skeptics and environmentally unfriendly businesses. The Prince of Wales has criticised corporate lobbyists and climate change skeptics for turning the Earth into a dying patient. In his most outspoken attack yet on the world's failure to tackle global warming, made shortly before he is to take over from the Queen at the forthcoming meeting of the Commonwealth. Also, in international news, the IUCN has announced a new global standard in assessing environmental risk. It's called the IUCN Red List of Ecosystems, and it's been trialed on 20 ecosystems spanning 6 continents and 3 oceans. By knowing which ecosystems are tracking well and which ones are in trouble, governments, industries, and local communities will be well positioned to make smart investment decisions for sustainable environment management. Very well done there from IUCN, who also this week signed an MOU with a key player in the tropical timber industry to try to work together on the assessment of timber species for the IUCN Red List of Threatened Species. This helps improve the way that forest resources are indeed managed. They will explore the important role that forest certification plays for biodiversity and for local, social, and economic development. During its initial years, the new partnership will focus on the West and Central African sub-region. Positively this week, New York banned shark fin sales. Very well done to the state legislature that voted unanimously to ban the sale and distribution of shark fins, essential ingredient in shark fin soup. Also talking about the oceans, Sea Shepherd this week have announced on the back of their most successful campaign ever, which was Operation Zero Tolerance last year, that saved 932 whales, Sea Shepherd this week have launched Operation Relentless. Like the last season's campaign, Operation Relentless will be managed and led by Sea Shepherd Australia. It will be their 10th Antarctic whale defense campaign, defending at-risk whales in the Southern Ocean Whale Sanctuary. During the past 9 seasons, Sea Shepherd's direct action interventions have saved the lives of more than 4,500 whales and exposed illegal Japanese whaling to the world. Fantastic news there. Well done to Sea Shepherd, and Operation Relentless will no doubt be on TV and will be as successful as their others. On the website on myseek.org under our radio show, I've linked up a new video on Mexican sea turtle conservation, a very nicely put together doco. If you've got a minute, do check that out. Comments in over the week by Aussie coal-fat cat Clive Palmer. He's a nasty climate change denier and is creating the new Titanic. It's being made by a Chinese company. And in an interview with the Aussie media this week, he crazily made the comment, one of the benefits of global warming is that there's not as many icebergs in the North Atlantic. Take that as you will. Clive Palmer says it all. Well, in a more eco-friendly way on transportation, a plane powered only by the sun, by solar, has completed the first leg of a journey that aims to cross the US. It's called Solar Impulse, and it took off from San Francisco and landed in Phoenix, Arizona, some 18 hours later. The plane has the same wingspan as an Airbus A340, so a very wide plane, but it weighs only 1.6 tons. It's already made a day and night flight lasting more than 26 hours, and the team aims to eventually circumnavigate the globe in 2015. That's fantastic. That really is the state of aircrafts to come, and I'm sure we'll see more from guys like that. The EU is planning to impose tariffs on Chinese solar panels. The tariffs will be as high as nearly 70% to counter unfair pricing in the largest EU trade dispute of its kind. That's important. Also, Tesla, the electric car maker, made its first profit this year, in this month, in its 10-year history. It made $15 million of profit in the first 3 months of the year, thanks to sales of its Model S electric sedan. It's not for sale yet here in Thailand, but it is being introduced to Hong Kong. They managed to get worldwide orders for their Model S in excess of 20,000 vehicles per year. Excellent job. Well, that's it. I'm out of time. Do enjoy your weekend. Please get out there and clean some beaches. Do reduce, reuse, and recycle, and be responsible to Phuket and be responsible to our planet. Thanks very much for joining me here on the Going Green Show. Next Saturday, I've got Jeremy Tang will be here from Hong Kong. He'll be talking about retail practices, best practices, that is, on sustainability. So a retail discussion next Saturday. Do tune in 3 till 5 p.m. every Saturday. The weeks fly, but do keep your head up, keep a smile on your face, get out on the beaches, and enjoy life. Ciao for now.